What's going on, fight fans? This is Capital Combat. The name says it all. I'm Rob Jermell, and this is the preview to Saturday's Showtime matchup featuring Abner versus Leo Santa Cruz for the featherweight WBA regular championship. We know how the WBA are with their belts. It's ridiculous. So we'll try to work that out as we go along. And also we have the scheduled junior middleweight matchup between Jermell Charlo and Austin Trout for Charlo's WBC junior middleweight title. That's going to be an interesting matchup. So that's exactly where we're going to start. So this should be an interesting matchup. We know that Austin Trout faced Jermell Charlo, the larger twin Charlo brother, back in, let us see, it was a few fights, about 3 fights ago, and where it went all 12 rounds. Jermell Charlo got the win, but it was a really tough and exciting fight for Jermell Charlo, who was the more aggressive of the two fighters. He's currently at middleweight, looking for some really good matchups. I think he might be one of the best or top 3 to 4 fighters in that division. But right now, Austin Trout is familiar with the style that the Charlos fight. Again, Jermell Charlo is a lot more aggressive, but over the last few years, you can see that the Charlos are much better conditioned, they're much more muscular, they're much more aggressive, and they're a lot sharper than they used to be. Jermell Charlo was more of the boxer to set you up, but he's been hitting much harder lately as well. So we take a look. He knocked out Eric Salubin, he knocked out Charles Hatley, he knocked out John Jackson, and he knocked out Joaquin Alcine. That's 4 knockouts in a row. And at that point, in his last few, I think the last 10 fights, he might have had 3 out of 10 knockouts against really good competition that, to me, is not as good as those last 4 guys he fought, which includes Martirosyan, Rosado, Hopkins, Yorgi, Deshaun Johnson. But he knocked out, and he went in there and did his work. But now he's been hitting a lot harder, and which is maybe a little bit difficult for Trout. I mean, Trout fights from, he's been fighting more aggressively. He's been a lot better offensively, and he's been taking more chances than he has in the past. After that, he lost twice to Jarrett Hurd and Jermell Charlo, but then he knocked out Joey Hernandez. He retired 2 fighters, but after that, he had a few unanimous decisions. But remember, he lost to Erislan Allure, who took advantage of a guy who is normally a counterpuncher in Austin Trout. And then he gave Saul Alvarez, even though he was knocked down, he wasn't knocked out. And again, Austin Trout has only been knocked out once, and that was against Jarrett Hurd. And that's because Jarrett Hurd's style puts a lot of pressure on a guy like Trout, who doesn't hit extremely hard, but he's sharp, he's accurate, and that southpaw stance, again, he was able to counterpunch, punch over, and he was able to set up the left hand each time by just stepping to his right and throwing it right down the pipe. But Charlo is much more athletic. He's much more powerful. He's bigger. I think he has longer reach and might be about 2 to 3 inches taller than Austin Trout. I think he's around 5'9" to 5'10", and Charlo maybe around 6 feet. But he's one of the taller fighters in that division. I see this going a lot how Trout versus Jermell Charlo did a few years ago. But again, that was in 2016, and this is 2018. And again, those in that time since 2016, he has had 3 knockouts of very good competition, but who don't have the experience of of Austin Trout. Eric Lubin was still pretty green. Charles Hadley, while good, really hadn't fought that much. So even though he had about 27 fights, he had stopped being active. So he looked rusty. And John Jackson, being the taller and more aggressive, gave Charlo a lot of trouble. And I think he actually fights from a southpaw stance. No, he's orthodox, but he did give him a lot of trouble. So look for a wily Austin Trout to pick his spots. He could be knocked down. Look for him to be knocked down in this fight, but it should go all 12 with Charlo picking up the win. It may not be pretty, but we'll see how far he's come against a guy like Trout. But he pretty much handled Eric Salubin, but let's be honest, like I said, he was still pretty green since when he fought Charlo. Um, but it should be an interesting matchup, no less. Tell us what you think. I think Charlo wins. I think he's pretty much at the top of the totem pole when it comes to the junior middleweight division. And the main event is going to be Leo Santa Cruz versus Abner Mares. Now, the first fight was really, really interesting. It was a split decision that went toward, no, majority, I think a majority draw that went towards Santa Cruz, who is currently, and I'm going to see if I can get this right. He's the super champion for the WBA. Abner Mares is the regular featherweight champion, and Jesus Rojas is the interim champion. The WBA is freaking ridiculous, man. I don't know. They gotta, I guess this kind of sorts that out, and maybe Leo Santa Cruz fights Jesus Rojas. But if you watch the first fight, it was really exciting. I thought both guys did a lot of things well. I don't think it's going to be that much different of a fight. Abner Mares pretty much took it to the taller Santa Cruz. He's much thicker, I think a little bit bigger. So he was able to push Leo Santa Cruz against the ropes quite a bit. So, I'm sorry, that was a majority decision that went to Santa Cruz. But he was able to push him up against the ropes in the first half of the fight. But Santa Cruz has awesome conditioning. He's a volume puncher who varies up his shots. He's a hellacious body puncher. But what he did versus Abner Mares was he worked the jab, and when he worked off that jab, he had found a lot of success. It almost reached its mark each time in the second half, and he was able to set himself up from that position. I would like to see him do what he did with Carl Frampton. Carl Frampton being the more athletic, the faster fighter against Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz was able to use his height and his boxing ability to kind of move around the outside. I think Mares is going to push him up against the ropes, and he's a guy that is much more willing to be a little bit dirty. Grab on the ropes, push him up against the ropes, hit him a little low, hips, maybe below the belt when the ref isn't looking. But I don't think he does quite as much this time. I think Leo Santa Cruz, again, gets the win. I don't see any knockouts happening. Just prepare for this to be a slugfest for about 12 rounds. But Leo Santa Cruz will try to be a lot more patient, and he does a better job at actually turning Mares. When Mares was able to step to his left or right, he was able to get an angle on Leo Santa Cruz quite a bit, because you want to take him and his long limbs off. You don't want to be in his line of sight at all. You want to start hitting from different angles. You want to set up those angles, not just push him up against the ropes. If you watch a lot of fighters, they take a little half step to the right or the left. At this point, I want to see Mares go to the right so he can dig into Santa Cruz. Let me take that back. I want to see him go to the left. I want to see him go to the left under the jab and under the left hook, but he has to be more willing. Both guys did a lot of great body work in the first punch, but I think Leo Santa Cruz is a more willing and a better volume puncher, while Abner Mares will swing for the freaking fences, and whatever he hits, he hits. But I think he can't be on line with Santa Cruz. When he hit him from those angles, once he stepped, got around those long arms, he had a lot of success. Again, he's probably going to tire out around the 10th round. They're both well-conditioned, but I think Leo Santa Cruz is much more well-conditioned and much more willing to throw anywhere from 900 to 1,200 punches, which Abner Mares can throw that, but you could tell he was losing steam down the stretch, and that's where you started to find that mark with the jab for Leo Santa Cruz. I want to see Leo Santa Cruz stay on the outside as much as he can for the first half of the fight. Mares is going to keep coming. But as long as he can maybe move a little bit around, turn Mares, and use his aggressiveness against him and kind of counterpunch, or turn him, set up with a jab, then step into all his punches from the outside, that should be really interesting. But I think I think Leo Santa Cruz's ability to adjust is much better than Mares. And this is no knock on Mares because Mares had a really good win versus Jesus Cuellar, where I was expecting Cuellar to actually put him against the ropes, and you saw Leo Santa Cruz box just a little bit more against Cuellar. So, and that ended in a split decision, so you could tell how good of a fight that was. But Mares is up against a guy who can take a lot of punishment and deliver it back. Maybe not on one punches like he can, but it's like a lot of bee stings coming from Leo Santa Cruz. I'm not even gonna say a lot of bee stings. It's like getting hit with a wrench 1,000 times, and I think that's how this is gonna go. Tell us what you think. These guys are some Mexican warriors. One grew up in Mexico, the other one in California, if I'm not mistaken. And these dudes do not know how to back down. They had no quit in them, and that's what we're gonna expect. That's all I got for you today. Hakeem's going to do the preview for the ESPN card with Terrence Crawford versus Jeff Horn, which should be an interesting matchup because Jeff Horn has his signature win versus Manny Pacquiao, no matter what you thought about it. And Terrence Crawford, to me, has had some good wins, but he hasn't had that signature win. Getting past Jeff Horn gives him I think the WBC, and I'm going to look that up right now because my memory, I told you, is pretty shot. Jeff Horn has the WBO belt, and the WBC is vacant. So this should be interesting because if Terrence Crawford can get the WBO strap, then that sets up a fight between Errol Spence, Danny Garcia, maybe Keith Thurman, the winner of Lucas Matisse versus Manny Pacquiao, whoever. That's all I got for you today, guys. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you think in the comments section. Send us an email, capitalcombat@gmail.com, Capital Combat at Facebook, Capital Combat at Instagram. And until next time, fight on.
This is round one, and you've already lost. They don't seem to see that everything we've done is coming.